battleground sign
is an upcoming march and demonstration being planned for March 8th of this year. March 8th, of course, is International Working Women's Day, a holiday that began in the United States of America. Anyway, this demonstration is being planned to protest the executive order signed by newly installed President Biden that will abolish, if applied fully, women's sports and women's spaces in society. I think that would just be a catastrophe. You know,
let me slow down for just a moment. Proposed bill? Is it a proposed bill or some legislation?
An executive order. It's an executive order he signed.
An executive order.
What the executive order does is allow government officials to make a decision on whether or not to allow men in areas that have previously been women-only sports and women-only spaces. The origin of these women-only sports and spaces is Title IX of the Civil Rights Bill. Title IX was passed in 1970. As a young man, when I was growing up, there was no such thing as like sports for young women. So laws had to be passed so that women could take part in sports. Further, in society, when I was growing up now, there were no open public spaces for women in American society other than a woman's restroom. You know, so this demonstration is being planned to protest, right? It reminds me of one day after President Donald Trump was sworn in office. You had the largest demonstration of women in American history. That was one day. So apparently Biden is getting an extra 39 or 40 days before the protests begin against him. And again, I could say these protests coming up against Biden couldn't happen to a better guy. That's just some of the stuff that's in the news that I've been running on my Facebook page. And some people have gotten tired of me talking about women. Now, they don't say it like that. What they say is, do you hate transgender people?
Yeah, they try to flip the conversation.
Well, they say it like that to obscure it. What we're talking about is women, your mother, your daughters, granddaughters, your wives, sisters. That's what's being talked about. Should they have women-only spaces on Earth and in society? Women-only spaces mean spaces that's shut off to men. Anyone who does not know what a woman is or a man is needs some serious schooling, because, you know, the difference between man and woman can be observed with a 99.8% accuracy rate. The women are the ones that carry the babies. Everybody's supposed to know this, you know. So I've been dealing with things like that in this whole new way of looking at things, where all of a sudden there's confusion around what a man and what a woman is. It's just nonsense, more bourgeois ideology. It's an attempt of white men specifically to crush women, to hold on to power. It's a last-ditch effort to stop the fall and collapse of a dying colonialism. So, I mean, I've been involved in that. You know what I'm saying?
Now, we know that this legislation, this bill, or what have you, this executive order is going to be passed, it's going to be cleared, even though we protest or we stand up in defiance to it anyway. Some people say that there's some kind of agenda. I like the way you articulated it. What is the agenda with all of this protection of the LGBT community?
Well, you know, see, like I don't lump everything together. You know, and the reason, that's part of my Marxist training, that every difference is a difference, that you have qualitative differences, qualitative variations. Say, for instance, the L in the LGBTQ. The L in that means lesbians, right? Now, the plight of lesbians and that struggle has its own peculiarity that has nothing in common with, like, let's say, the struggle of the T's. The T's are the transgender people. And I'm saying it like that because I think it's a mistake to lump these things together, although the enemy lumps them together to confuse people.
I never had anybody explain it like that.
Well, you know, it's lesbian refer to women. Gay refers to homosexual men. That's what we called them growing up. B refers to bi, you know, a person that enjoys a sex relationship with man or woman. And then you have queers and queer theories, and just the fact that it's a thing called queer theory should make a person's antenna stand up. A queer theory, right? That in itself is intriguing, but the bottom line is that women were the first oppressed and exploited group in human society, you know, and on the basis of the oppression of women, an entire system of oppression and exploitation was created. And it is the task of every ruling class that bases its power on ownership of collective property to ensure that women remain in the toilet at the bottom of the social ladder. This idea that says that men, biological men, can become women is a philosophy of insanity. It's simply not possible for a biological man to become a biological woman. It's simply impossible. It's preposterous to even think it can happen.
Say that again. You said it was insanity.
It's absolutely a form of insanity, without question. It is an insane mind. And I'm not talking about personality or whatever individual traits the individual choose to assimilate, right? And there's cases of men passing as women. I'm not talking about that either. I'm talking about an element of this queer theory that says that men actually become women. Right? It's just a form of insanity. Men cannot become women. And women and men are distinguished by their biological reproductive system. It's a system. It's not just your genitals. Your genitals are an expression of your biological system. If my penis got cut off, and I hope it never do, it wouldn't stop me from being a man, because I still have a male biological system. But Biden passed, or rather signed, an executive order supposedly allowing men to enter women-only sports and spaces. And a big fight is getting ready to take place against that. I think it'd be halted, most certainly at the level of women's sports and stuff.
Now, we've seen already in mixed martial arts where you have these transgender males go into the female mixed martial arts arena and dominate. I think it was Joe Rogan, who's one of the most popular commentators. He had spoke out in defiance to it, where there were two instances where these females had their faces and their skulls actually fractured in fights with transgender men.
Biological men, as a general rule, on Earth, can beat women because of our physical mass. You know, there's times when my patience for playing word games with the enemy, right? See, the enemy create all these terms to obscure transgender. What does that mean? What does trans mean? What does gender mean? What I'm talking about is biological men, by whatever name they call themselves. Let's say biological men who refer to themselves as trans women still remain biological men. They have been excluded from women's sports for 50 years. What has changed in our society and way of life so as to allow these men into women's sports? And we're talking about women's spaces also. For instance, high school boys who declare themselves to feel like a girl, or however they express, right? This thing being called transgender will, because they express it, be allowed in the young girls' restrooms and locker rooms. Why? See, this insanity of the ruling class to pit us against each other and to ensure the domination of men and society. To me, it's just clear. But you have people who side with the enemy. You know, it's nothing new. I mean, it's just nothing new. You have people who side with the enemy, who
Absolutely.
believe deeply that these are new type of human beings amongst our species that never existed before, right?
Well, that's a hard pill to swallow, but the truth is the truth. We cannot deny the truth.
Well, biological men don't change because of taking hormones. This is where Marxism come in. You cannot change or make a leap from one quality to a new quality. That is, you can't leap from the quality of a man to the quality of a woman on the basis of your thinking. Because you say something, because you say, I feel like a woman, I live like a woman. That's not sufficient to change you into a woman. Nor will hormone injections change your biological system. It's simply not possible. Now, I do vehemently advocate for and uphold personal freedoms and what we call political liberty and the right of the individual to live their life as they please. However, I don't have to buy into bullshit. I can't be compelled to pretend that a man becomes a woman. In general, what you do in the privacy of your home is your business. But in a larger society, allowing men to box women, allowing men to wrestle women, allowing men into women's basketball, allowing men to compete against Serena and Venus Williams. Why? Why?
I'm curious to know, like, what segment of the population is approving of this stuff? You know, like who is accepting this stuff and supporting it, and why?
It's a very narrow layer. Okay, this is my view, right? I think it's a very narrow layer of society. At best 3, 4, 5%. You have a ruling caste in this country, a group of people who make their living from ruling, from holding the levels of power in state and government. They get a paycheck. They are paid to carry out these orders. This is a strategy of the ruling class. It's been thought out. It's backed up by the pharmaceutical industry that's poised to make billions of dollars, fooling people into thinking that a man can become a woman. And that's insane. Why do people believe it? For the same reason that most people, white people in particular, in our country believed that black people were not fully human beings, that we represented a different, lower evolutionary stage of development of Homo sapiens sapien. They believed that in this country. Same thing, no difference. And they believed it because it was part of the justification for oppression, exploitation, colonialism. And 30% of the population still believe it. 70 million people voted for Trump. And they're quite serious about support for his oligarchic form of fascism. That's who support this agenda that says there should no longer be women-only sports and spaces in American society. That's the issue and question I address. How you live, what you wear, who you pretend with, who you love, who you have sex with is not my business. I don't involve myself in those kind of public conversations, But I do take a position around woman's emancipation and freedom.